Glory to Jesus Christ. I'm Father Thomas Loya. I am a Byzantine Catholic priest from the Byzantine Eparchy of Parma. I'd like to welcome you once again to the Artist Studio, where in the Artist Studio we make visible what is invisible through the physical. That's what artists do. You know, they think of a thought, have a concept, and they draw it, bring it into reality through paint or sculpture and so on. But what we're really making visible through the physical is certain realities of life. In other words, we're talking about here in the studio the sacramental worldview, the liturgical worldview, where invisible realities such as God and what it is to be human, what it is to be a man and a woman, we're making those things visible and tangible through the physical. And we're doing this also with the help of John Paul II's Theology of the Body. It means that the body reveals God. In other words, the physical points to something beyond itself. And one of the most significant things that our bodies, as male and female, as human beings, points to is what John Paul II called the Spousal Mystery. The Spousal Mystery means that God moved out towards His own creation, towards especially us, His human beings, His church, in what's called a spousal mystery. In other words, God in a sense wedded us. He was like the groom, the bridegroom, and we, the human race, His creation, especially the church, is His bride. John Paul II called this that spousal mystery. He said it was fundamental to human existence. And that spousal mystery is imaged throughout all of creation. It's sort of the DNA of the created order. But it comes to its fullness in the human person, especially precisely in the fact that we are male and female. One of my favorite phrases from John Paul II was this. He said, humanity, its dignity and its balance, at every moment and every place in the globe will depend upon who man is for woman and who woman is for man. Because within our bodies, within our gendered persons, is this spousal mystery. So if we get it right, who is a man, who is a woman, who are they for each other? If we can get that right, if we know the why behind that, in other words, the mystical explanation, the mystical foundation, if we know that why, we know how to be a man, how to be human. Conversely, if we don't know the why, if we don't understand this spousal mystery stamped in our very bodies as male and female, we won't know how to be male, how to be female. You know, as a priest, a lot of people will call me or consult me, especially when they have problems, personal problems, or need spiritual direction, or family problems, or marriage problems. And one of the things I tell them is, there's no such thing as a marriage problem. I know that sounds a little strange, but let me say that again. There's no such thing as a marriage problem. You see, there's only a problem of the understanding of the theology of the body. In other words, who is a man, who is a woman, who they are for each other. When they don't understand that, that's when problems occur. Now, marriage is simply a venue in which these problems may rise to the surface. But there's no problems, at least I'm proposing, there are no problems specific to marriage itself, although we use that term. It's really a problem about who we are as male and female. And the really neat thing about understanding the theology of the body and this spousal mystery is that the more we understand that, the more we know how to get along better between men and women, especially in marriage. Once we understand who a man is, who a woman is, and how we're, in a sense, hardwired, and why we are, then we know how to communicate better. Many of our problems between men and women, especially in marriage, have to do with not understanding each other as male and female, the why behind it. And so what happens is a man and a woman will miss each other. They'll sort of disconnect on what I'm going to call their legitimate needs. In other words, because of how a man is created by God and the purpose why he's a man, has certain needs or certain legitimate needs that he has as a man. A woman in the same way. Because of how she's created by God and why she's created by God precisely as a woman, she's going to have certain legitimate needs. The more we understand that about each other, the more we tend to meet those needs, then we sort of meet up between each other. We have a union, a communion and union of persons in love that's also very fruitful. Now, when we don't understand that about each other, what happens is we start to miss each other's needs. And when we do that, we're not connecting, we start to almost resent each other. And when the resentment becomes strong enough, it starts to create estrangement and distance until finally you have complete breakup, such as things in like divorce. But the key is to understand how we're hardwired by God. A lot of times you hear this saying that men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Well, that's sort of approaching it, but not exactly. With the theology of the body, we learn that men and women are made from the same substance, but in different ways. We're both human, made from the same human stuff, but we're male or female because, as we saw in an earlier presentation, woman, by virtue of her very body, images the immanence of God, the closeness of God, His love, His tenderness, His immanence, His presence. And also, she's the archetype of the human race, as John Paul II said, because precisely with her gift, her genius of receptivity, everything about her body is designed to receive, to take into her. Because of that, she represents, or sort of the archetype of the human race. Because the human race was created by God to stand primarily in a posture of receptivity to God's love. A man, on the other hand, by virtue of the way his body is designed, how it works, points to the transcendence of God, that He is out there, He is wild, He is exciting, He is awesome, frightening in a good way. And also that initiating love of God, that God the Father moves out. He makes the first move in love. In fact, that's what fatherhood means. And that is imaged in the very body of a man and how a man is hardwired. And there's reasons for this. And we see this replete in every aspect of our existence. And a lot of times it can be actually kind of fun as we sort of unravel each other as male and female. It doesn't have to be a cause for tension. In fact, it can be a cause of total and constant wonderment, of unraveling one another precisely as male and female. One day, a friend of mine, we got tickets to a baseball game. It was actually a Chicago Cubs game. And I had learned when I moved to Chicago area that the Chicago Cubs game was like kind of more of a happening, more than just a game. So my friend Sal and I, we went to this game together. We come in where I got our tickets. I'm all excited because, see, at that time they had this slugger named Sammy Sosa. And I thought, wow, the Chicago Cubs, the old field, it's great, like real baseball. They actually hit home runs out of the park. You'd actually see it go out of the park and somebody outside the park catches it. So I'm thinking, gee, I hope my tickets are on the left field line. I'll see Sammy Sosa hit a home run and it'll go out of the park. Well, sure enough, I got tickets. I'm on the left field line. So Sal and I sit down there. We get all set to watch the game. There were two young ladies in front of us. Well, first pitch of the game goes out. Game starts. The two young ladies turned to themselves and began to talk. First inning, second inning, third inning, fourth inning, fifth inning. Finally, the sixth inning, Sammy Sosa hits a home run. I get my dream, and it starts to go past me, and it starts to go out of the park. Everybody jumps up to cheer. The two girls jump up and kept talking. Well, by that time, I began to watch them, because this was amazing. About the eighth inning, they turned to me in perfect synchronization, and I kid you not, and they said to me, "We talk a lot, don't we?" And then right back to continue to talk for the rest of the game. They never once looked out at the field. I was fascinated by this. I thought to myself, this is genius. This must be what John Paul II was talking about. Complete connectedness with each other, no matter what else was happening. This was genius. This was incredible. This was an art. I was starting to watch that towards the end of the game more than the game itself, because I was seeing something like a lesson in the theology of the body. Womanhood, geared to connectedness, no matter what, relational, part of the gift, part of their genius. No matter what else is going on, the important thing was that they were connecting with each other. There was relationships going on there. They probably went home and said, boy, we just love going to Cubs games. They're so much fun. Now, my friend and I, Sal, we hardly looked at each other once. But we were in communication. You know, that's how guys do. You know, it's like, hey, Sal, great game, huh? Yeah, Tom, it's great. You see that play? Yeah. Hey, Sal, you get another beer? Yeah, sure, Tom, here. Wow, great game, Sal, isn't it? You see, when guys communicate, they hardly look at each other, but yet they're in full communication because, you know, guys have this rule because of the way they're designed by God, the way they're hardwired. They always are looking outward for themselves. I can never see guys look at each other when they talk, hardly at all. What's the matter? You got a problem? No, why? You got a problem? Why? Because you're looking at me. I'm not looking at you. Maybe you're looking at me. Maybe you got a problem. No, maybe you got a problem because you're looking at me. You see, guys don't look at each other. You know the guy rule? Pull up along the side of a guy in a car, happen to glance over, 2 or 3 seconds, that's it, right? You look at a guy, guys look at each other longer than that, it usually means 2 things and either one is good. It's sort of the guy code. But why is that? See, ladies, this is what you have to understand about us guys. It's because we're wired to defend and to protect, to always look for the task at hand, the point of something, look for the enemy coming over the hill. And so guys are wired by God to look outward for themselves, to look far away, to kind of have that vision, that sort of single focusedness. And they communicate, in a sense, almost like sideways. They sort of look outward, always have that eye out there, ready for action, ready to see the task of something. For ladies, it's something a little bit different. They're concerned with connecting, with relating, connectedness, stamped in their very bodies. Why? Because they image the image of God, and they image the archetype. They're the archetype of the human race. Men, on the other hand, are imaging an other aspect of God. And there are other vocations to defend and to protect. Now, because of how we're hardwired as men and women, and the why behind it, men and women will draw strength in different ways. And this is very important for communication. Women will always seek connectedness or relationship when they're feeling sort of down and out. I've been a priest for many years. And I've never had a man call me up and say, hey, Father, we've got marriage problems. Can we come in and talk to you? It's always the woman. See, because the woman will re-energize. Women by nature will re-energize by wanting to connect, to enter into relationships whenever they're feeling down and out or out of sorts or having difficulties. With men, it's really very different. And this is important to understand. You see, men seek solitude. In other words, they go into what we call a cave, which means they get their remote. And by the way, this is a remote that I've designed, which I think is part of the answer to the renewal of the family. It's got this great big giant mute button on it, you see. You can mute out the commercials. You just kind of reach over and slap the big mute button and you mute out the commercials, and therefore you can talk to each other, talk to that person in the room. You might get to actually know them sometime. Anyway, the man grabs his remote, he goes into his cave, which means he enters into his recliner chair, and he goes into solitude. He zones out. That's how he re-energizes. Now, while he's in there with his remote, see, men watch TV like they hunt. Along comes his wife, and she says to him something like this. She comes over and says to him, honey, you never guess what happened today. Now, ladies, you have to understand something. When you say that word to a man, he may be in his lounge chair, his recliner chair with his remote. He may be in his zone, in his cave, as it were, in his solitude. But when he hears that word, you never guess what happened today. In his brain is doing this. It looks something like this. What? What happened? What's going on? Because you see, a man's brain is designed to look for the task, look for the point of something. There's a hormone that kicks in called cortisol. It's like a stress hormone. So men are always looking to see what needs to be defended and protected, what needs to be fixed or created anew or broken up or torn down. Always the point of things. And men, by nature, are very quick, but they don't sustain as long. So there he is in his recliner chair. His wife comes along and says, you'll never guess what happened today, honey. And inside his brain's starting to kick in, the cortisol, the hormone. He's ready for action in his mind, but he's still in his solitude. And she starts to tell him, well, you see, oh, but by the way, I ran into Susie. Do you remember that blue dress she bought last week? Well, the wife starts going through all these details of the story, which are very important to her, see, because it's her way of connecting. But see, the man, as he's listening to this, he's ready for action. You know, he's in this mode, defend and protect mode, his cortisol running. But he can only sustain that for so long. So what happens is he begins to wilt, and because he's waiting for the point. What is the point? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? This is going on mentally. Well, finally she gets to the point after all that. He's already wilted, gone deeper into his zone, and then she'll say, well, honey, what do you think? What? What does she do? You don't listen to me. Well, ladies, actually, he does listen, but in a different way. You see, men look for the point of things. Ladies like the details. And that's because of how we're hardwired, and for good reason. So, what we have to do is this. So the important thing is to understand how we are, in a sense, wired by God as male and female. Because then we can do what I call in communication, take a step towards one another. In other words, in our little demonstration here, the male, the man, has to understand what is important to the woman, and that what's important to her has a reason behind it, a reason by God's design. In other words, a theology of the body. The body reveals God. It is the way she is, her idiosyncrasies as a woman. Those things that sometimes can be confusing or points of tension have a mystical foundation to them. They have a kind of a holy reason behind them. And as the man understands her better and what her needs are, then he can relate to her more lovingly, more humanly. She has a need, as all women do, stamped in their very bodies, to connect. The details of her story are important because what she wants most of all, and men, this is what women in your life want most of all, especially your wives. They want your presence. They want to just know that you are with them, that you are connected to them, you are aware of them, you are conscious of them. And once you understand that, what you can do, men, is even though it might be hard for you at the moment, you're in your zone, you're in your solitude, you need that solitude, you're looking for the point of things, you're stressed out, whatever. What you need to do is what I call take a step towards her. In other words, realize that she does need your attention. She does need a certain sense of your presence, of connecting with you. It may be difficult for you, that's all right, but love is all about taking a step towards the other. In other words, notice what I said here. I said a step. I didn't say you have to go 100%. You don't stop being who you are. You take a step towards her, realizing that the details, the connectedness, the relating, the presence is important to her in that moment. For men, it's the task, the point. See, that's why women like what guys call chick flicks or romance novels, romance movies, because the point is the relationship, the connectedness. That's what's most important to her by and large. For guys, there's always got to be the point of something. There's always got to be a bad guy who gets killed by the good guy. Guys walk out of a theater thinking that they were the good guy. You know, they sort of imagine that they were the guy in the movie and they feel a sense of accomplishment from the movie. If a movie doesn't have that, for guys, it's like it has no point. It's not that guys love violence or something. It's just that they are designed by God to be warriors and defenders, to look for the point of things, to see the direction of something, the enemy coming over the hill and the way to lead a family or a nation or a community or a church. And that's why they like movies, for instance, that are like what we might call more violent. It's not the violence they like, it's the fact that there's a point. There's something to be accomplished. Now, conversely, for the ladies, you have to take a step towards the man. You have to realize that his mind is programmed, as we saw here, even biochemically, for reacting to stress, for getting the job done, to defend, to protect, for looking for the point of things, the task of things. And if he doesn't see that, if his mind doesn't see that, his mind starts to zone, starts to become less attentive, less present to you. It starts to wander. So what you have to do, ladies, you have to sometimes get to the point a little sooner. Understand what his needs are. Again, take a step towards him. I didn't say all the way. I said a step towards him. And if he takes a step towards you, you begin to draw closer and closer. It's kind of like this. You see my two hands? As long as this hand is pressing up against this hand, and this hand is pressing up against this hand, this is very strong. This can never never fall. This is impenetrable. But if one hand moves it back in its own direction, what's going to happen? That's going to collapse. That's like the relationship of husband and wife, of man and woman, always moving outward towards one another in what the Theology of the Body calls this gift of self. This is the spousal mystery. It's imitating what God did for us. He took a step in our direction. And as He did and inspired us and touched us, we in turn respond to Him in what John Paul II called in his Theology of the Body a reciprocal circuit, a sort of a reciprocity of love. And that's how love works. You move out towards the other. You don't have to worry about having your own needs met if you do that. If you move out towards the other is touched by that and responds reciprocally. It's not a matter of being victims. It's a matter of entering into a spousal relationship, especially by understanding how each other is created by God, hardwired for a purpose, to reveal God, to reveal the divine order of things, that even down to little idiosyncrasies. You know, why men like football? You know, well, women do too, but they like it in a different way. Men like it in a different way. Why men love to barbecue? Did you ever notice that? Men love to barbecue. There's something about that, you know, poking at that meat, you know, and turning it over. It's sort of it's sort of a way that guys act upon the environment. When we said that about our bodies, they're external, they act upon the environment, they affect something. You know, you got that barbecue fork and that grill going, it's very earthy. It's like a challenge, it's like a job to be done. And you're grilling that meat, you know, and the guys, if you've got buddies over there standing around with their beer, you know, it's like a big male bonding thing. You know, we laugh at that male bonding, but male bonding is very significant for men because you see, men draw strength from one another, and they cannot be denied that. You see, manhood is something which is bestowed on a man. Maleness is natural. They got a male body. But manhood is something which is bestowed upon them. It comes from outside. Remember ladies too, always understand this about men, stamped in their very bodies. Maleness is about externality. Remember, it's about God the Father, who's out there, who's external, who's transcendent, who moves outward from Himself. It's about that phallic energy we talked about. So even manhood itself, men become men by having manhood bestowed upon them. And usually it comes from the father, or it comes from the community, civilization, the culture that says to the man, the boy, you have what it takes. You see, because a man's body is designed to sort of take the hits, to act upon the environment, and to accomplish the task, his greatest desire in life is to know that he has what it takes, that he measures up, that he can walk with the men, the boys now. And that comes from outside. Remember in the gospel, at Jesus' baptism, he hears the voice of his Father from heaven. It says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Even Jesus Christ, in His human manhood, is affirmed by His Father in heaven. This is my Son. It's as though it was a rite of passage. See, men need these rites of passage. They need to be told. They need to be given a message that they measure up. And without that message, men come up against their greatest fear, which, of course, would be failure, that they don't measure up. And this is a vital message that men need. And they need it especially, first of all, from other men, especially their fathers, but also they need it in a different kind of way from the women in their lives. You see, ladies, a man will go out and fight dragons for you. He'll go out and he'll defend and he'll protect. He'll take the hits as he is called to do by virtue of his male body, the theology of the body. He'll do that and be inspired to do that for you. He's called by God to do that for you. Men are called to be men on behalf of womanhood, and He'll be able to do that for you if you can see in your eyes that message. You have what it takes. I believe in you. You are my knight in shining armor. And he'll go back out there and take those hits, even if it kills him, on behalf of the woman. So men, on your part, you have to understand and remember what a woman's needs are, what we call legitimate needs. She has to know that you are there to be present to her, to in a sense fight for her, to defend and to protect her. Not because she's weak, but because as woman she has vocations. She has things that she has to be about, the matters of life and love. She has to contribute to society, to family, to the church, to the world in a way that is precisely hers, through her vocations, to be woman in the Spirit, mother in the Spirit, daughter in the Spirit, spouse, wife in the Spirit. She has a unique contribution to make that only she can make as woman. In order for her to do that, she has to know that there is this structure, there is a culture, a society, a family, a household that will protect her and allow her to be about her vocations, which are stamped in her very bodies. Conversely, men have their vocations, but they need to draw their inspiration from woman and also have their manhood bestowed, as it were, from the outside by that message that you've got what it takes. So as we learn more and more about who we are, how God has, in a sense, hardwired us for His purposes to reveal Himself, to reveal His divine order, as we learn more and more about that through things like the theology of the body, we know the why behind we're male and female, the why behind we're human, and therefore we know better how to be male, how to be female, how to be more human. It's all about the invisible made visible through the physical.